So anger, shame, resentment. Anger is an interesting emotion. From the moment you and I are born to the time we die, life is nothing but a struggle. It is. If you have power, if for example your TV is broke, if you have power, that means if you have money, if you have a car, and if you have a Costco membership, and let's just say you don't want to go there by yourself and you ask your wife and she says yes because she loves you or cares for you or she hates you but she likes a TV and she doesn't trust your judgment, she says, okay, let's go together. Now, let's say from here you go home and you have the story that's playing in your head, and today and tomorrow I'm off and I want to watch Godfather, the trilogy. And as you play with that story, that narrative or that desire more and more and more, you become much more intimate with it. Now you have a relationship that today I want to go home and I want to watch TV. I want to order pizza from Zachary's, grab myself a couple bags of chips, some sodas, and just have a good time with my wife and kids. You don't care about anything else, and that's becoming very focused. And you become focused when you have an intimate relationship with something, anything. You become single-minded. You go home and your wife says, while I was vacuuming, accidentally I tripped over the TV, it fell from the ceiling and it's all broke. The TV was your Garden of Eden, it was your paradise, it was your Jesus Christ. It was a way for you to get rid of boredom, to find happiness, paradise down here on earth for a couple of days. It was a way for you to kind of find distraction from the busyness and the burden of life. And life really is a burden that's placed on human shoulders. Because unlike all the animals out there, you really have to figure out what to do with your life. And especially as the culture evolves or maybe devolves and something about our culture steals, robs, destroys meanings, identity, relevance, significance from our lives, life becomes even more burdensome. You no longer have to please God, you just have to find meaning for your life. But you go to Home Depot, it's no good. You go to In-N-Out, it's no good. You look at your wife, it's no good. You look at your kids, it's no good. You look at everything about your life and you realize there is so little meaning in it. And it's no longer an age where you say, well, God made my life this way and I should accept my life the way it is because it came from God. That particular belief system is God. And now the sort of burden that people had in regards to life some maybe 500 years ago, for you now in 21st century has a different quality to it. It's much more burdensome, you're much more depressed, you feel much more lonely and alienated. I doubt very much Karl Marx, when he spoke about alienation, if he was to come back to life, he wouldn't understand what alienation really means in the 21st century. Because life is so different now than it was in the 19th and 20th century, you see. And so when you go home and you realize that the TV doesn't work, it's like you've been expelled. Now, what happens is there's a disturbance. In other words, there is this crack that's not in your narrative. I drove home really, really fast, and I got the pizza, and I got the chips, and I showered, and I shaved, and I want to lay with my wife and watch TV, but there is no TV. That's the first crack. And you try to ask your wife, well, how did this happen? And the moment there's a disturbance, there's a crack, what you do is you try to fix it. Now, let's say you're sort of a handyman, you pick up the TV, you plug it in, you try to look at, the stuff in the back, whatever they're called, and you try to, fiddle with them, see if accidentally you can bring it back to life. And the TV remains dead. Now, you rise up to fix the TV because you want the crack to go away so your narrative can come back to life. So you can jump into bed with your wife and watch 5 hours of TV, but it's not working out. And as you're playing with the TV, trying to fix it, frustration overcomes you. And you keep asking your wife, how could you do this? How many times do you have to tell you, pay attention when you're vacuuming? Maybe we should go to Costco and buy a cordless vacuum, like one of those Dysons for $700. And so the blame game comes into being. You try to punish your wife, and your wife says, well, you didn't wash the dishes last night, and I'm trying to do the entire thing. Clean the house, vacuum this, do laundry, make food. And as you try to shame her, she tries to shame you see. So it begins with a sense of frustration. And you look at the time and you realize, well, you've been playing with trying to fix a TV for an hour and a half, and now anxiousness overcomes you. And remember, all these negative emotions are like a leech attached to your body. I don't know if you know what a leech is. It's like a worm that's very, very tiny, that sticks to your flesh, and it begins to suck the blood out of you, and all of a sudden it weighs like 50 pounds. You know, when it first got on you, it was like half a pound, let's just say. I don't know what kind of a leech, you know, weighs half a pound. But by the time it's done sucking most of your blood, it's like 50, 60 pounds. You look at the time and you realize that you've been playing to no success, and the TV is not going to get fixed. And then you say, damn, my day is ruined. I only had 2 days off and here it is. And you go online and you look at the Bank of America, how much money you have in your bank, and it says $2.25. Well, that's not going to take you much far. Now you're a little bit more angry. And by anger, I mean frustration, anxiety has blossomed now. Now, there are a couple of things about these emotions that you need to understand. These emotions can either be expressed outwardly, or you can be like a sage or a saint or a mystic, or just very mature. You can hold it in. So anger by itself doesn't mean really anything. It depends how you wish to express it. And if you want to hold it in, how mature are you in holding it in? You know, sometimes if you can imagine human beings to be like a balloon, you know, if you put a lot of air in the balloon, it's going to pop. If on the other hand, you know the capacity of the balloon and you just put enough air into it, it can sustain itself for a long, long, long time. So just because you're able to hold in a certain amount of emotion, it doesn't actually mean that you have the capacity or longevity to do so for a long time. There's a good chance, as many of us in this class experience, you hold something in, and that could be temperamental, it could be because you've read a book, it may be because you've been to a therapist, and you realize, well, you're holding in the emotions, but your companion doesn't really understand what he or she is doing. You know, just because you don't say anything, it doesn't mean you don't see. So what happens is your resentment grows. And resentment comes in two ways. You resent yourself for not speaking up, and you resent for your companion because he or she happened to be far too dumb to notice their behavior, whether it's speech or action, and how it's impacting you and your life and creating emotions that you don't really want to be around inside you. So remember, as you have more of these emotions and as they blossom inside you like leech, they take more energy from you, they take more power from you, and you become more poor. If you're poor, what happens? Let's say you read the meditations written by Marcus Aurelius, and all of a sudden you say, man, I resent this guy. He's old, he's done so many crummy things in his life, he has lived a life filled with sin, even though he was not a Christian. They just categorize him as such. How is it that he was able to contain his emotions so well? And so you try to mimic, you try to write the way he does, speak the way he does, feel about life the way he does, but you're not Marcus Aurelius, you're just an imitator. And imitators are counterfeit. You'll eventually get caught, you know, either by life or by yourself. You know, it's like your mom says, here, honey, here's a 24-karat gold, for example, and you take it to a shop to sell it because you can't pay rent, and the guy looking at this watch, supposedly 24 karat, says, I'm sorry, this is a fake. So you try to kind of imitate Marcus Aurelius, and eventually life says to you, you're just a scumbag. You know, you've been faking it all along, but here you are. This is who you really are. When you realize you have no money, when you realize that you have no TV, you become really, really angry. And it's not just about the TV. Remember, it's about the story you created for yourself in this classroom. You want to go home and watch 10 hours of TV. And as you and your wife wrestle, as you wrestle with yourself, as once in a while you catch yourself having screamed at your wife and feeling bad and ashamed, there comes a point where, again, you go to your bank account, realize you don't have any money, and you scream at your wife, do we have any credit cards? These are all attempts to remove anger or poverty from you. And eventually she says, yes, we have a Visa. Can you check the interest rate? She says, yes, it's 28.2%. Now you're consumed by anger, and you're not rational. And that's what emotions are. They're not rational. Rationality means you create a good amount of space between you and a certain event that had caused this other you with these other emotions. And you sit back and you observe not only yourself, you also observe the event outside that has the power to push you around so much. So Immanuel Kant, who argued that what human beings have in common is we have the power to be reasonable and rational animals. That's actually not true. You can't treat life or yourself like a mathematical equation, because that's what Immanuel Kant argued. But Immanuel Kant was a guy who was not married, who didn't have children, who had lots of money, who had a great job, And from what little I know about his life, he died relatively peacefully. And his life very much was like a clockwork. You know, he would wake up at 6 in the morning, go for a walk, have his breakfast, go up and down the stairs a few times, go teach his classes, come back home. That's it. And he was religious. After a good amount of wrestling, and you wrestle because you're angry, and you wrestle because you want to have domination over anger or emotions, and after you've villainized your wife and she has villainized you, there comes a point where the two of you make peace. You say, okay, I'll just work an extra 5, 10, 15, 20 hours. I know the credit card interest rate is 28%, it's a hell of a lot. Well, let's just go buy this TV. We need a TV anyways. And we'll just pay the interest for 1 month, then we'll pay the rest of it off. She says, okay. And you guys are driving to Costco. And you're both very, very quiet. You're asking yourself if it's worth buying a TV for like $1,500 to $2,000, if it's worth being in debt. Why are you so weak? Why do you fall victim to this particular temptation? Maybe instead of watching TV, you can go for a hike with your wife. You play all these games. And then you say to yourself, whisper to yourself, did you really have to speak to your wife in that way? Did you have to blame her? What is wrong with you? You're no longer 15 or 16 or 20. Now the anger, turns inward. Now you begin to be a bit more self-reflective. The emotions have gone away. Now you're confronted with a different set of emotions. Now what you have is shame. Not shame before your wife, but shame for yourself. And then as your wife is just looking the other direction, being very upset with you because she has this whole set of responsibilities you don't even understand or care to understand. With your right hand, you stretch it out and you hold her hand and you say, Joanna, I'm sorry. I'm just a stupid man. And she says, don't talk to me. Oh, Joanna, don't be like that. You know why you're doing this? A couple of reasons. Anger is no longer your companion. Shame is. Regret is. Remorse is. In addition, you also have the power. You're sitting in the car, you're driving to Costco. Your dream is almost coming true. All you need is your wife to make peace with you. She becomes your church. You kneel, you beg, you cry, you repent, and after 20, 30, 40, 50 minutes, there are even moments where while you're trying to ask for forgiveness, you raise your voice. You say, God damn it, how many times do I have to tell you? I'm sorry. But this anger is not about the TV. You want to be accepted. You want to be received well. You want to be forgiven. You just don't know what else to do. And you realize the same frustration that overtook you while trying to fix the TV, now you're trying to fix the wife. Now you're trying to fix the emotion that you have inside you. So as long as you know how frustration works, as long as you know how it blossoms into anxiety, confusion, helplessness, fear, anger, it doesn't matter what path in life you walk into or what event visits you. Whether it's a TV or me dismissing your question over and over again in this class, it works the same way. Once you understand something really, really well, it doesn't mean that you won't fall victim to it, but you can at least understand it when some time passes. Now you go to Costco, and Costco has beautiful TVs, man. And so as you're walking through the TV aisle, you see 5,000 different TVs, and there is one that's winking at you, buy me, buy me. And let's say it's a Samsung, 955-inch TV. And you look at your wife and you say, honey, let's get that. That? I don't like that. Uh-oh. Let's get this other one. But you know what happens when you just focus on one thing and you dismiss all the other things, but your wife has a different focus and a completely different thing? Now you have another wrestling match. She tries to convince you, you try to convince her. And now it's very much like going back and fixing the TV. Now somehow the two of you begin to wrestle. But you do it civilly. Now you're in the middle of Costco, there are all these people looking at you, watching you, and knowing that you're a little bit of a child, she looks at you and says, it's 28.2% interest rate. We can buy a TV maybe for $2,000, but for $7,000, that's a bit ridiculous. A TV is a TV. It doesn't need to be voice activated. TV turn on, TV turn off, TV put on Rambo. Given that women have a good amount of power, you accept, but you accept with a lot of resentment. And there comes a point, since we are men and we lack the patience, he says, all right, let's just get the TV, let's go home. And then on the way home, the two of you talk about which TV would have been better, but you're stuck with the one that she chose. And then you take the TV inside the house, you take it out of the box, You look at the booklet and you try to put it together, diode by diode. And as you're engaged in setting up the TV, you forget all about the Costco stuff. But the pamphlet is a little complicated. And as you try to put the TV together, you realize all of a sudden you're just getting fidgety, a little anxious, a little frustrated, a little. The same frustration as you were trying to fix the broken TV. It's come back. Let's just say you put the TV together and it's really good now. It's going to take you about an hour and a half to connect to the internet, to set it up, And now it's 7 p.m. You're exhausted, like a leech, you got no blood left inside you. You look at your wife and you say, "You want to watch TV? I'm done, I just want to go to bed." You wake up in the morning, and let's just say you have a couple of nightmares. You wake up in the morning at 6, the kids are gone, the wife is gone, and there is Raphael with his brand new, 100-inch TV stuck to the wall. You pull the blinds, you reheat the Zachary's pizza, and watch 7 hours. Anger is there no more. But depending how reflective you are after having watched TV for 7 hours, you become an existentialist. You say, really? Like a corpse, I laid in my bed and watched 7 hours of TV. Now you have a different kind of a frustration, connected to different set of issues. As long as you know that life is an imposition, that birth is an imposition, not something you chose. And I'm not going to be spiritual or religious saying, oh, you're here for a reason. Forget all that stuff. Life is just a burden because you're forced to be responsible for things that you never wanted to be responsible for. The only way I think you can save yourself from a great deal of frustration, anxiety, confusion, dread, anger, rage, violence, power. The more power you have in life, the more you're in charge. And the truth is, when you're in your teens, when your job is insecure, when you don't have a degree, let's just say, it's going to be very, very difficult for you to just say, oh, I am a Stoic, I don't really care. You're just a counterfeit. You're not born to be a Jesus Christ or a Buddha. You're just a regular chap in a life that's there to just demolish every part of you. Let's say you and I are married, and let's say you and I have children. And let's say that we got married when you were, 30 and I was 35. And your parents were very religious. You were a Bible thumper. You have a very unique relationship with religion and religious ideas and sentiments and all that. And you always wanted your life to have a religious meaning. The truth is, from a very young age, you wanted to be a nun. You wanted to devote your entire life to God, let's just say. But things in life happen and you begin to find boys somewhat interesting. And then, like Pinocchio, you begin to have some bad relationships. And your relationship with God disappears and you begin your relationship with boys. And you go through a string of bad relationships. But deep down, your foundation, even though you may have forgotten it, is one of religiosity. You wanted to live a solitary life, just immerse yourself in books and ideas and writing and talking about things that are meaningful in the religious way. At the age of 30, your body begins to scream, baby. And that becomes the altar for you that you worship. And now you go out there, you say, okay, is there a man worthy enough to be the father of my child? And eventually I walk into your life. Now remember, like all dreams that we have, motherhood, having a child, they're just fantasies, dreams, stories. And kind of like the movie we talked about, Bluey, the assumption is I'm going to be the best mother, or the best father, or the best this and the best that. And these ideas are not yet challenged or tested by life. So you and I find ourselves online, each other online. We hang out a little bit, first by some messaging. I like you, you like me. I post a picture of myself that was when I was 20. By you being a bit more honest, you post a picture of you as you are. And me and you kind of meet at some cafe, and you see me as being a little hunched, having no hair, wrinkled and all that. You say, oh, this is Amir? Yeah, I'm sorry, I didn't have any other pictures. And there is something about us human beings where you rely on your 5 senses and they find what is attractive, what is pleasurable. You look at me and you realize that there is nothing about me that is attractive, at least on the surface. But you've been raised well, you're polite, you have a good amount of self-respect. So instead of coming out and saying, slapping me and walking away, you say, okay, you can buy me, some coffee and some pastries and we'll sit and talk. And as we talk, you realize that you're no longer looking at my face, or maybe you are, but something about the way I am allows you to overlook, all of my flaws. And after many dates, you say, or I say, well, let's get married. And you say, yeah, it's great, let's do it. And your dreams are slowly coming true. And you get married, you go to Hawaii, and 10 minutes later, you say, Amir, I think I'm pregnant. And we're both excited, you just a bit more, because it was your body who screamed. And I just said, okay. Then comes the 5th or the 6th month, or maybe even a bit earlier. Your brain chemistry, body chemistry has changed a little, or maybe a lot. I come and I say, hey, honey, how are you doing? Don't talk to me. A pleasant dream is turning into a nightmare of sorts. And you catch yourself saying, what is wrong with you? You just came home, you just asked, how are you doing? Just say, I'm fine, thank you. Is there food to eat? Yeah, in the kitchen, go cook for yourself. You can't sleep, you're irritable all the time, you're exhausted all the time, and rightly so. And then after being tormented, disturbed, bothered by this unborn child, at a certain point while we are watching a movie, you say, I think my water broke. So God, it's midnight, I don't want to go to Kaiser, but I have no choice. We go there. And you push and you pull and you push and you pull and you push and you pull, and this thing comes out. And you love. It's the easiest thing any mother can do. Now, prior to being married and prior to having children, you spend so much of your time reading and thinking and engage in, say, high-powered conversations. And now it's just diapers and pooping and rashes, and waking up in the middle of the night and nursing this kid, and having a husband as me, being a complete idiot. But you're very much aware of time. You're very much aware of old age and sickness and all that. That you look at yourself and you say, my parents had me, and they did all the stuff. They're now all sitting somewhere. I'm just living my life. Is this what happens to all parents? That they give their life to a kid, the kid gets to a certain age, and they leave. And the parents are left behind, completely exhausted and drained. And you say, is this the way I want to spend my time? Because all kids eventually will be ungrateful. Whether or not they come back and show gratitude, that's a different story. And you put your kid down for a nap, and you say, thank God, after 2 months, now I can sit and read a good book. And let's just say you go to the library, and you grab Dialogues of Plato off of the shelf, or the Bible. You say, good, now I can read one of the Gospels. And the moment you open the Bible, you hear something. It's your child crying. And you usually don't use any foul language. But this time, you say, really? I just want a moment of peace, that's all I want. Is that too much to ask? And you raise your hand, raise your head to the heavens. And as you go to nurse your child, you do so with a good amount of resentment. She robbed you of your time. She robbed you of your passion. She robbed you of yourself. And as you nurse this kid with a good amount of resentment, you also come to realize that she's just an infant. She's weak. She came here because of you and me. She had no hand to play. You should be a bit more mature. Be motherly. Be the way that your mom was with you. Just surrender, accept. As you give more of yourself to your child, there is less of you that's there. And the kid turns to be like 4 or 5. Now you have a different kind of issue. You look around you and you realize for the first time, you realize you're a social and political animal. Your child, whom you have nursed and taken care of for the past 5 or 6 years, is now going to enter society. What school? Public school? Private school? What kind of friends? What kind of movies can we watch? What kind of friendships can we have? And you realize that most of your brain space is now occupied by taking care of this kid, so that nothing on the outside or the inside can get broken by society. There is even less of you that's left for you. And as you go to various functions to figure out what to do with your child's future, and as you and I talk, you do everything with a good amount of resentment, because this is not the life that you chose for yourself. Your body demanded the baby, you gave it to it. Now, your child, and you love the kid. That's how things are. You spend most of your time trying to figure out, it's like a chess game. Where should you place your child so he doesn't get checked? Far worse, checkmated, because it's going to impact you. And then there comes a point where forgetfulness sets in. Let's say your child is like 6 or 7 or 8. You're no longer a helicopter parent. hovering over him or her to figure out if they're going the right places, good places, right friends. And I come to you and say, listen, I have a brother and I have a sister. I can't imagine life without having a sibling. We need to have another child, not because you and I love kids, but because our kid needs a sibling, needs a friend. Life is a long journey. Friendships, they don't have much shelf life. And these is perhaps not even siblings, but that's besides the point. Let's have another one. And like the TV, you and I wrestle a little bit, eventually you say, okay, you're now 45 or 50, and you've spent the last 20, 25 years of your life taking care of other people, and you've forgotten about yourself. And the only reason you can really think about having the second child is you forget the difficulties of having the first one, and you forget the difficulties of raising the first one. That's one of the benefits or curses of being a forgetful animal. Despite the horror show for 10 years, you're willing to do it again. For about 20 years, you've resented nursing, taking care of your kids, taking care of your husband, taking care of the house. You're angry because you see all of it as somewhat of a waste, especially when you get sick. Your kids can't help you. Me as your husband can't help you. Can perhaps make you soup, but you gotta do the pain alone. And being alone is very, very tough unless you have a great amount of maturity. And then you regain your health, resentment, anger. And every time you go out and you see people just on their own, walking by themselves, you envy them. You say, I want to be like that. Every time you pass by a coffee shop and there's a man or a woman sitting and reading a book, I just say the Bible, you envy them and you become angry at yourself and your life. And something very strange happens deep within. You say to yourself, maybe I should just leave. But this idea, maybe I should leave, just didn't come up. It's been going on for a long, long time without your awareness, behind closed doors maybe. And you say, maybe I should leave because you have lost something and you want to reclaim it. And you see other people as the villains. They are the ones who took those things away from you. And you also realize it was a mistake perhaps for you to get married, for you to have children, for you to be part of society, because society is no good, doesn't offer you much. Chews you up and spits you out, and then you're just completely forgotten. And then there comes a point, and this is like many weeks or months or years pass by, when you knock on the door and say, I mean, we need to talk. Okay? And by this time, our relationship really is no longer like on fire. You know, you do your thing, I do my thing. This is not working out. What's not working out? We are not working out. Well, do you want to go to Costco? I say, being a simpleton man. You want to go on a cruise? What do you want to do? No, I don't want to be with you. Okay, well, just go to your own room. No, I don't think you understand, you say. What? I want a divorce. Well, what did I do? The truth is, I didn't do anything. This is just life. I am one of those things that you have to carry. Life. But you don't want to be part of life anymore. And you don't have to be part of life anymore because it goes all the way back to your childhood, from 0 to about 15 or 16 or 20. You always wanted to live a reflective life. And life steals that particular desire from you. And we try to work things out, but you become more and more angry because I'm pushing you to be in a life you seriously no longer want to be in. And if you've seen the movie Freedom Writers, there comes a time or a moment where I come home and your suitcases are packed. So what is this? Are we going somewhere? Yeah, you're staying here. I'm leaving. What about the kids? I no longer care. They're in college. What the hell? And that's how ultimately resentment and envy and anger show themselves in a very, very practical container.